Hey Hunters, how's it going?
Hey guys, how's it going?
It's me and Pedro again, and
Yeah.
trying to talk about story without spoiling anything.
It's going to be pretty much impossible as usual.
Extraordinarily, we were not like I'm playing on the latest build, so you guys won't be able to join me now. This was just done today, so the build is from the 29th of November. If you're a time traveler, you can use this to figure out when you are. So today is the 29th of November. Thank you very much. And yeah, there's a new build that we have on the development branch on Steam, and it's very bugged. We did a bunch of item and loot stuff under the hood, and it should be like the only change that you're going to see is that your progress has been wiped. Sorry about that. So I'm here with all level one characters except Ace because Ace is awesome, and we are pretty much just doing really boring under the hood stuff to be able to do loot, and now we're almost done. So we're starting to just build the game and deploy it. We're probably going to deploy builds this week with the inventory screen. So this screen, but just done because this is not the screen. So we're working on it right now. As me and Pedro are here talking to you, the other guys on the team are working hard on this, and hopefully we can do it by this week. It's the only major change you're gonna see under the hood. Everything is different because we've done major overhauls to our tools and our code, all to be able to do loot in a really cool way. And also the sound is wrong. The sound, it's so ridiculous. So it's good for me to just test this out and check how which bugs I find. I already know that Pinky is not even playable. She's completely crashing the game. So, so there's that. So I'll just be playing Ace and Jimmy pretty much.
She's just insta crashing
Hello
everything.
Potato. Hello Japuri. I wasn't paying attention to chat.
Oh, hey guys, how's it going, Potato? How's it going, Jupri?
Hello. How are you guys today? So yeah, so the idea is for us, like me and Pedro, we are even able to play together right now on this build because I think we screwed crossplay somehow.
Yeah,
And Pedro is on the Mac and I'm on PC. Usually we can play together, but
yeah,
we broke crossplay, so boo.
yeah. Well, it's another good thing that we did, though.
Yeah, yeah.
because Now we know we can fix it.
Yeah, we just have to bug Hunter's Legend a little bit.
Yeah. We should have that mode. It would be very. It would come. It really would come in handy.
Well, I have a secret to tell you, Pedro. All of the modes are this mode.
I can definitely shoehorn this into the war somehow.
All of the modes are Bug Hunter's Legend. So yeah, today we're going to try and talk about story again. This time at least, I think we have more interesting things to tell them, right?
Yeah.
About the processes and things that we have been doing, like in
Yeah.
terms of the structure of the game, I guess, because it's not exactly what actually happens, but how you're going to interact with the story at all.
Yeah, this is something that it's a little bit hard to see when you really don't have the story, but it's a good it's a good thing that we started talking about structures recently to figure out exactly how we were going to tell the story, how the player is going to experience it, how we're going to. I don't know if you guys were here at the last time that I was doing a lore stream, but I remember, like, I hope you guys remember me talking a lot about giving importance to characters and their own history and their own perspective of how things are unfolding at this time, which is in Relic Hunters Legend. And it was really interesting to figure out exactly how we're going to seam all like these character stories into like a cohesive, unique story that the player is going to experience. So it's pretty interesting to talk about that. But mainly we're going to obviously have story missions, right? Like main story missions that we're going to tell this single story that is really important to what is happening in this world right now. Wow, it's so hard to not give out spoilers. But it's
Yeah, just tell like how it is. Like
Yeah.
when I just log into the game, like
right.
what goes on? Like what kinds of story content can I play?
Right. So right off the bat, when you first log into the game, you're going to meet this beautiful new character that we have been talking to you a little bit about in trailers and everything else, which is Seven. And you're going to meet Seven as she meets, or they, since we're not really stipulating a fixed genre for her yet.
Yeah, you can choose the gender for your Seven. Your Seven can be
Exactly.
male, female, or non-binary.
And so Seven, she since I'm actually writing her in a female gender, but really it really doesn't matter at this point. We're going to specify more about that later. But she like you start the game and you meet her as she actually is meeting with the other hunters, right? And
Huh?
whoa,
Sorry for
almost. Almost. And as she meets the other hunters, we are going to understand and what exactly is going on in the universe at this point. And first thing that you're going to see when you meet her is there's going to be this. We're going to introduce a lot of the missions, and there is this main mission storyline that you're going to start with, which is obviously going to present the game to new players. Of course, you guys have been playing it a lot, right? So you guys know, you guys are keeping up with us, so you know exactly how this is going to be played. But people are going to get presented to the game for the first time, introduced to it, and as we are introducing mechanics and all this stuff, we are going to start this story. And as soon as you finish some, you're going to have different kinds of missions. So basically, you have two main kinds of missions, right? So you have the adventure missions, which are actual kind of like boxed experiences with cutscenes and a specific sequence of acts that you have to follow, which is going to be peppered with adventure quests, which the quests are going to be more loose in the sense of you know any player can just follow it on their own rhythm and not be really too worried about if they're following the story in the right rhythm or not. But mainly these quests are going to be really interesting to introduce more to the player, to where he is, to his weapons, and to his powers, and to everything that the players want to you know, how they're going to play the game, right?
Right. So we should probably explain to people what adventures are, though.
Yes.
So adventures in Relic Hunters Legend, they are like a little chapter of either like a self-contained story or a chapter of a bigger story, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you play an adventure, it's a collection of things, usually adventure quests and adventure missions, like Pedro just said.
Yeah.
And if you adventure missions are pretty self-explanatory. You just go into a mission and it's like there are cutscenes, there are like levels and enemies and things happen and etc. But adventure quests, if any of you guys have played like Fortnite, the PvE version of Fortnite, it's pretty much like that. you get like quests that advance the story, but they're not tied to any specific mission. So you can just be playing, doing other content in Relic Hunters Legend, and fulfilling the requirements of that adventure quest, and you're not progressing the story further.
So, because for us, it's really important that the story progression happens in a very natural manner, in the sense of, you know, like it can be something that it has to follow the rhythm of every player, right? Because there's a bunch of different people that is going to play, and the quests are very, very important because they're not just numbers to fill out, right? They really are a way to measure the way that you will how do you say, experience and evolve with the game story. So these quests at first will look like, oh, you know, just go and kill this many enemies, or defeat, you know, this particular enemy on a harder setting or a harder difficulty.
Right.
But deeply, they will actually resonate with how you're going to be experiencing the story, how the story is actually progressing a little bit. So it's not just like we're really trying to put more to simply just, you know, simple goals and number of goals, a series of goals that you have to do, right?
Potato Guardian, you're pretty much on point there. It's something like that. So, like Pedro said, the idea is that we allow you to advance the story while doing multiplayer content at your own pace. I think this is very important because we want to be like, there's gonna be a lot more story in Relic Hunters Legend than you usually get in like online looter kind of games. They're usually very light on story. We want to be very heavy on story. So, but we know that in multiplayer games, usually you just want to get things done, right? You just want to get the dungeon done, you just want to get your loots, and people are just hurrying you, and if you want to enjoy a story, that could be detrimental. So for us, it's like a careful balance between, hey, let's just do this like story-based mission that is clearly labeled as such, and so you know, and you can, usually they're going to be easy, right? We're not going to give you like a super challenge in like story-based missions. They're going to be mainly about telling the story, not about providing you with like a hardcore challenge, anything like that. So you can join these alone and just enjoy the story at your own pace. But then the story quests can take you to multiplayer content. And like Pedro said, it's also gonna help guide you towards activities and teach you systems, things like that. And also like suggest you trying different things, like play 5 missions as ace, like you just said, and just encouraging you to do things that we think are fun, right? So it's another way. Quests, not only story quests, but all kinds of quests, are an opportunity for us to direct you towards fun, I guess, and towards variety.
And it's very important for us to for you to get familiar with like your favorite hunters, and really kind of get to be like, oh, you know, like these hunters have a different, not only like a play style, but the way that you guys are going to be experiencing more, you know, like the more that you play with different hunters, the more different kinds of perspective you're going to have about this world and about the story that's being unfolding. So sometimes what we really wanted to do is like, oh, okay, you know, I've been playing with Ace, I really love Ace, but what about Raph, right? Like, what is Raph doing around like all this, like around all these happenings and all these missions and hardships that they've been going through? And when you switch to Raph and you play a little bit with her, you realize that, you know, there's a lot going on with her and her own private universe, and although it's going to be really close to the story of the other hunters, you will actually experience it through the eyes of Raph, and which will actually be a little bit different, and will show different perspective about like the events that are going to be unfolding as you progress in the story.
The thing, I feel like the most interesting thing about this kind of structure is that it's very non-linear. So we try to be very much character-based storytelling. So we want you to meet and talk to these characters at your own pace. So if you really like Ace, you're going to try and raise your friendship with Ace and play him a lot and like do quests and things that advance your friendship with him. That will unlock new adventures. That are centered around Ace's character, right? And all of these things are happening alongside what could be considered the main storyline, like the story of Seven and the relics and all others going on. But it's not the only stories that we're going to be telling. So I think one of the biggest challenges, but at the same time one of the most interesting things about this project for Pedro and I, is that we're building a little world, right? So not only telling a single story, which is the first time for us. Like when I did Chroma Squad, like Chroma Squad had a lot of story, but it was like a very self-contained story. We were not trying to build a world or like tell a larger tale of people in this ensemble of characters or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
And with Legend, we have both. So we have like a linear, fully fleshed out story, which is the Legend storyline, which tells the story of Seven and everything around her or him. And but we also have all of these characters and places and things going on that we want to explore and give you the option to explore at your own pace.
Yeah, and it's really cool because you know, we constantly talk about this. I think I mentioned this the last time that we were I was on a stream, that with time it actually feels like that like me and Venturelli, like we are both guides in this beautiful magical world, just, you know,
Choosing which parts are most interesting, right? To take you on tours.
Rather than just telling a story, right? Like we're less than storytellers and more like guides.
That's a really interesting perspective.
Yeah, like I honestly feel like whenever, especially when we go back to the world building Bible that we always referencing and always changing and stuff, and you look at that and you think about it like, wow, like we, like with time we're actually getting to become like, we're becoming guides, like tourist guides. Like, you know, you should go here.
I think it's really interesting perspective. It's a really fun way to look at it. If you think about it like the adventures, since they're like these collections of stories with like a central theme or a central storyline, they're kind of like tours, right? Hey, take this tour or take that tour.
Exactly. And that's the most amazing, and as Mark said too, it is sometimes is a little bit overwhelming, even for Mark, who's very experienced, which is this is a story that has a lot of possibilities of storytelling. Like there's a lot of places that we can, ways that we can tell the story and tell a little bit about the world and stuff, but at the same time there are so many possibilities that this is actually overwhelming to keep track that all these possibilities continue to be consistent, and all these ways that we're going to tell the story won't kind of interfere with each other. But like it's just amazing how many ways that we can tell story in this game, not only through the obvious ways of, you know, the adventure quests and the adventure missions and the cutscenes and all that, but with the story, the friendship story of each hunters, the personal story of each hunter as you go and meet them, the personal story of some items and relics and stuff that you you know, naturally will gather and naturally will get while you are going to play this game. And like we really want to do in a way that everywhere you look, even if you're not really like, you know, like, oh, I don't want to actively have to kind of think about the story, it's okay. Like there are very contextual and very passive ways that we're going to tell the story, with, you know, like the details around this game too.
And like Potato Guardian has a very deep and interesting question. which is how to design a character that feels deep and interesting.
This one I can actually answer that. This is something that me and Venturelli, like, we go over this concept so many times.
Every day.
Every day, I guess it's every day. But it really boils down not to a formula, but to a simple way of understanding characters, which is like this. Every character is pretty much moved by the stuff they want, the stuff they need, and the stuff that makes them change, or something that they fear, or a kind of flaw that they have. Because what's important for the audience is not just the style or the form or who in fact is the character, but why would you care about this character? That's the most, like, it's so hard to get to this crystallized.
Probably the question that I ask the most whenever Pedro writes something is, why should I care?
Why should I care? Like, all the time, it's a test that we go through with, like, all the characters and all the stuff that we write about the story is, why should we care about this? Like, why should we care that, Ace is fighting at this place at this time? Why should we care that Seven is meeting all these hunters at this specific time in their lives? Why does this matter, right? And it is really like, you feel that they are deep whenever the audiences connect to them. So whenever you guys, you players, you are getting to know a character, and all of a sudden you feel emotions towards these characters, and honestly, sometimes it's not even like, it doesn't have to be good emotions, right? Especially towards villains, for example, or even towards those hard protagonists that we love so much. They are very flawed characters, and we care that they kind of like get over those flaws, and that they realize how to get better. So whenever we as an audience get to that feeling of like, wow, I'm participating in this character's decisions, but not in decisions in the sense of just simply deciding whether to go left or right, but more in the sense of like, wow, I really feel that I'm participating in the way that this character feels about the world that he's living in, and the way that this character is feeling about the other characters that are his friends or his enemies.
Yeah, like my take on it, and my take on this whole thing is about not only the character, like you can write the deepest, most interesting character like in your notepad or something like that. But if you write a story where this character is not really acting in a way that is interesting, it will fall flat as well, right? So I think, like from my perspective, it's very important that the story is about the characters, right? In a way that, hey, these characters are just going through some really major things, and they are making decisions, and they're making mistakes because they have flaws as well. And they're learning, and they're growing, and sometimes they're growing pains, and they make these choices, and the choices lead them sometimes to dark places, and but they also grow, and they can win and do really selfless and growing things, right? And I think watching people make mistakes and overcome their limitations and become better persons is a very powerful reason of why we tell stories and why we like stories so much.
Yeah. And not only that too, right? Like when we, it's funny that you mentioned this whole thing about like how, characters versus plot and versus story. And when you start studying narrative and you start studying like story development, you see a lot of like specialists and experts saying like, you develop the story and then you develop the characters, and then one is going to be fueled by the other. But to be honest, there is no difference between like character and story when you get to a high level of storytelling, I guess, because like it really literally boils down to the same thing. Like if you don't, like, the characters are the ones who bring the story out. There's no story without characters, and there are no characters if they don't act and they do stuff that is in their nature, even if their nature is not really something good for themselves, right? So it really is like it's funny how like sometimes they separate like a plot from character stories, but honestly, like now I really feel that they're one and the same. If you don't have strong characters that will consistently respond to the stuff that comes to their way,
In a believable way, right?
in a believable way, like it really doesn't matter if you have like an amazing story about whatever. The characters really have to be living in it. So, but that's a really good question, Potato Garden, and it's a question that I think that good writers may really never
Fully answer it.
yeah.
We're answering, or rather, answer it every day, I guess.
Yes, perfect. Like yeah, that's what I mean. Like, I really think that it's a like a question that you have to do to yourself every day as a writer.
So, just shifting gears a little bit, we also talk a lot, and we have been talking a lot, especially in the last few weeks, about other ways of storytelling in Relic Hunters Legend. They're not just like straight up story, like the adventures, and mainly like items and how you connect with them, because we're doing the item system right now. So I just sat down with Pedro, just walk him through how items work and how you're going to find them and the different systems and things like that. And now he's starting to flesh out just how we can deliver a little bit of story through every single item that you have in the game.
Yeah, so we were doing this last week and a little bit in this week too, and it is just so much fun. You guys have no idea how much fun it is to just create a bunch of items and just name them and just give them a meaning inside the story, or at least inside the lore. It is just so amazing just to see, it's really like, it almost feels like I'm not working.
Well, I'm a bit biased, but I think it did a great job at just like telling a little bit of lore through some of the items, and not only the descriptions, but also the names of the nature of some of the stuff that you find, but also balancing that with like a little bit of fun, like silly jokes, not resorting to like pop references or memes, just silly, funny things, lighthearted things.
No, I think it's very, very important to always have a little bit of humor in everything that you, even like there's no such thing as talking a very dramatic situation with a little bit of soft careful humor. I think it's always amazing, and I think if we didn't, if we were only going to tell the stories and doing like in this items descriptions and stuff, would be a little bit boring. Like, you guys have to have fun too, right? While
Yes.
you guys are experiencing the stories. But I think it's really interesting. It's a really interesting challenge to imagine items that our characters are going to be using, because even though it's like a very, very simple item, you have to think just a little bit about it, like how did it come to this world, how it was made, where the character, how the character had access to it and got it in the first place. All of those stuff, when you actually think about them, they naturally kind of like tell stories.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, absolutely.
and it's really interesting, like it has to, like, the item can't be forced to tell like a story, like it has to be very natural. It has to be like an item. Like if it is a common item, why is it common? If it is a rare item, why is it rare? And why, if it's rare and only your character has it, like why not more people have it or something like that. Like if you start asking simple, small questions towards all this stuff, you actually find yourself looking into a lot of lore and a lot of story that you can create and easily deliver to the player. Also, like right now, obviously we're focusing on items and loot drops and stuff, but we really wish to kind of go to this through the same process of story, like this, let's say like this soft storytelling kind of thing, in levels and mission descriptions and all that, like all of that. And of course, like talking to some NPCs whenever they're available and all that. All of that are going to be telling the stories in the same way that we're doing with the items.
Like one of the other cool stuff that we have been talking about is the relics, right? So
Yes.
of course, the name of the game is Relic Hunters Legend. So
It's funny because like every now and then, like, no, we should talk about the relics now. We should describe them more now and hone them and chart their ideas, because of that. Like it's in the name of the game, it's in the title.
Yeah. I think we're now at a point where we can safely and skillfully talk about relics without spoiling anything important.
Oh yeah,
And,
especially since we've been seeing relics since Zero, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's some of the things about the lore of the relics, like why they have this power and how it is used, that I think might be going into spoilery territory a little bit.
Definitely.
But one of the, like, from the game design standpoint, I think it's really interesting how we're working with the relics this time around. So in Relic Hunters Zero, you would go just playing the levels, and you would just find pieces of the relics, right? And after you got like 3 pieces, you complete a relic, and there you have it. And the relics were just silly things. They're really silly things. Fun fact: Relic Hunters Zero was done at a game jam. It was a game jam project. And when we did it, one of the almost fell down. And when we did it, we the gen had like a few funny rules. Like if you could include some elements in the game, and they would review these elements as we were developing the game. Like if you could include those, you gain like extra points. So we tried to do them all. And that's how the relics actually got created. Because there were a lot of crazy things, like an alcoholic carrots, or like Yoda bikes drive, and like how can we do this in the game? And just created them as relics, and Bet will draw them. Holy cow!
Almost.
Yeah, just waiting for my cooldown a little bit here. Yeah, these guys are level 9. I'm just a poor level 8 ace. There we go. And where was I?
Yeah.
So relics, right?
Yeah,
So
relics.
we just did these weird things, right? So for Legend, we actually thinking about, okay, so what relics actually are in this world, and why are they so important, and where does their power come from? And I think we found something like really cool and really deep and really interesting that you're going to find out as you play. But the interesting thing from the game design standpoint is that each relic is going to have like its own little story bit, because the story and the relics are very closely connected. The relics have a lot of like importance in the world, right?
Yeah.
So every relic that you collect is going to have a relic hunt attached to it. So you're usually going to be hunting for the blueprint of a specific relic that you want to restore or to create, and find the pieces. So the pieces are still there. You're still going to collect probably 3 pieces of relics, exploring the world. But as you do that, and usually when you get the blueprint to go look for them in the first place and start relic hunt, it's usually going to be something related to the story of that particular relic. So every
Yeah.
relic is going to tell a little bit of the story of the larger world.
Yeah, and more like when Mark and I first sat down to talk about relics and stuff, we had very specific themes that we wanted to approach with the relics and what are the hunters doing and everything. We There are themes that are very dear to us in the sense of like futurism and how we think about our future and how do we remember our past and all that stuff. And relics are very interesting objects, not only in our game, but in the general concept sense of relics, they're really interesting too because relics, whatever it is, an antique, they tell the story, right? Whenever you go and whatever, you're going to buy furniture that is like used or something, they have like a story, right? Like, oh, it was like a couch that was for like this family bought it in the sale, and then all of a sudden the family moved to whatever city, and this couch was the only thing that they carried on with them, and they had like amazing times just sitting in the couch and just doing family stuff, right? So these like simple everyday objects, in a way, they hold very important stories. And that's something that we wanted to show with the game.
So answering Potato's question, I think it's both.
Yeah, it's definitely both. Exactly.
A little bit of magic.
It's a little bit of magic. It's a little bit of tech. Of course, the way that our hunters and the way that characters in general are going to be reacting to these relics are going to be in a very down-to-earth technological perspective, while they do have this kind of like magical characteristic imbued in all of them. And it's very important for us to just not only I mean, Mark has been doing games for a while now, and he knows how easy it is to get just empty with stories that you put into items or something like that. Like it's very easy to just miss the point in a way whenever, especially when you have like very loot heavy based games, right? Like whenever you have a game that has a lot of looting, it has a lot of collecting, it's easy to lose yourself and lose the story. So we wanted to turn that concept upside down by giving very important meaning and very important stories to these objects. Like, yes, you will be collecting them, but more importantly, you'll be collecting their story. And when you collect their story, you truly start understanding and like what is the kind of place that they're living in, and what happened in this crazy world so long ago that changed everything. And this is really interesting. Like it's a really interesting opportunity to put meaning into something that in modern game development it's so easily dismissed as items.
For me, I just keep coming back to the metaphor of being like a tourist guide. I think it's so cool. And it's like it's another opportunity to take you in like a little tour. Like if you go to a museum and there's like a helmet of a World War II soldier or something like that, probably somebody is going to tell you a story about that helmet, like who it belonged to and what actually happened. And not only that, is going to maybe connect you to history in a way that is a little bit more personal and real to you, because there is a physical object there that you can see, and that help you connect you to the people that were on that story, and also give you some perspective on the broader like history of what was going on.
Yeah. Like, to be honest, both me and Mark, we are just huge nerds and we just love going to museums and all that stuff. And we always loved the idea of just like, ooh, what if these amazing articles and things could actually transport us back to like the time that this object, you know,
Spoiler
just
alert.
yeah, yeah. Okay, not too many, but we just wanted to imagine like how cool it is to physically perceive the story inside of like an historical object. Like it's something that we as simple 3D beings, we are not really that good with the fourth dimension of time and stuff, but it's something that we always wonder, right? Like how it is to have this beautiful understanding of time and space. And I don't know, it's just like I would love to go back and understand like key points of like Brazilian history and just being there and just witnessing it and just looking at how things unfold. For me, it's a very powerful thing. It tells so much about like the people that are involved. It tells so much about what people have gone through. It's just very important for me. And like in the age that we live in, I mean, it is so hard to understand how history is going to be written. There's so much more information now than there was back in the day. Like we are drowned in informations and half truths all of our days, and our realities are being bent every day by like digital media and all that stuff, and social media. So it is a very interesting time to talk about like how are we going to be remembered, how like what is the meaning of life. All right, so we're getting too deep into this, but you get the gist of it. Like all these themes are very important for me and Mark.
Yeah, so going back a little bit, boots on the ground, like the actual experience of playing Relic Hunters. So these are all ways that we can do story. So adventures. So, for example, if you're here in the Galeno Desert region, right, and you're going to be progressing through missions, and one of the things that Pedro and I have talked more about is how to avoid creating like narrative dissonance. So narrative dissonance is like a fancy term for something that is actually very simple. That is when something is going on in the game that makes no sense in the story, right? So, example that I always tell Pedro is like,
And I love this story.
playing like GTA 4, right? And you're Nico Bellic, and Nico Bellic, he at first he doesn't really want to be a criminal. He just wants to straighten up and have like an honest life. And I was just playing the game, and I was doing a lot of side stuff in between the story missions, right? And I got like over $1 million, and I had like a huge flat that I bought, and I had like two Lamborghini kind of cars on my garage, right? All of this in the gameplay systems, but in the story, Nico, he really needed money, and he needed money so badly that he needed to do some pretty horrible stuff, and I was just like, why? Like I have like $1 million. I can just use that, or I can just sell my car. Like
Like
I'm
it's
rich. I'm
fine.
rich in the game. Why the
Yeah.
store is telling me that I'm not rich? And this is like a very extreme example of what happens when you don't invest a lot of time and efforts into making sure that the game matches the story. One of the things that is most challenging for us that I'm always talking about with Pedro is how to keep some things in the world kind of static. So, for example, Galena Deserts, you have the missions. They're multiplayer missions. You're always going to come back to these. So, the Galena Desert region is like a conflict zone. So, you have like the Fisher people, which are local natives, being oppressed by the Dukan army. And you have like the Kami in the caverns that are just a danger to everybody. And you have a lot of things going on, and it's a very inhospitable place. And so there's always stuff to do if you want to be like a hero. So you always have to like defeat Dukin patrols around Galena canyons, or you can be like helping escort some supplies to the rebels throughout the desert and things like that, right? So these are the missions. So if we do something in the story that kind of transforms Galena deserts in a way that these conflicts are no longer existent, how am I still playing these missions, right? So
Yeah.
it's so challenging, but it's
Yeah.
something that we're really trying to do. Like we want to explain and have like a story base for everything that we can. So, for example, multiplayer is explained in the story, which is really interesting. So there is actually an explanation why there are four aces shooting Dukins, right? And this is really cool. It was one of my favorite things. And we try to explain like your progression through the regions and the conflicts and how the characters in the world change. And we also have this interesting Chrono Trigger inspired ability to travel to different timelines. And this is a way for us to have consequences and change in the story, but having that is still making the gameplay viable. So Galena Desert still Galena Desert, right? You're still gonna be able to do all these missions and replay them and just grind for gear and help your friends level up, and whatever you do in the multiplayer game still makes sense. But we can still have change. But you're going to experience this when you go to a different timeline, and then you see that things are now a little bit different, and
Yeah.
the missions change to reflect that.
Adding to what Mark just said, like about how hard it is to create characters in a setting that can never change, because we can't have this hard turn of events in the settings. That and going back to Potato Guardian's question about how to design a character and stuff. So a good character has a good story when they go through an arc. What is basically an arc? An arc is a character feels and is in this way that they're a little bit flawed. Then something happens with them, the story happens, they are faced with a different challenge, something that disturbs their normal life, and they have to react and they have to become something different from where they first started. So basically that's an arc. A character goes through a series of challenges, and at the end he's a better, or maybe he's at least a different person from where he began in the story. So that's our problem. Like, how we're going to portray a world that changes and characters that change without actually having to change the dynamics of this world. And that is especially hard around the villains, right? Because well, you're going to be beating up these villains, and they are going to be on your asses for quite a while. And we don't want, we just, it wouldn't work out. I mean, you guys wouldn't even expect these villains if you just kick their asses once and all of a sudden, the world is a happy, beautiful place, right? It wouldn't even be that fun. So that's our challenge. Like, how can we get these characters to go through a bunch of different happenings and a bunch of different stuff that happens between them. And something that Mark always tells me is how, although sometimes we can't change how the places shift, but we can show how the characters change, in the sense of, like, we can show how the characters react differently to different stuff, and like we can show how these characters personally grew with the experiences that the players are going to throw them into. So that's the challenge, like how to tell the story without changing too much in the environment and in the character dynamics, but still managing to tell a very interesting arc with with actions and reactions and these characters actually learning something. It is a great challenge. I mean, it's hard, but it's just very like it keeps us on our toes, and definitely this kind of challenge keeps us as to keep getting better at writing it for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just like everything else in the game, we're planning things for the long run, right? So a lot of things that we do, they're taking a lot of time now. Just for example, the item system. We are almost done with the item system, but it's not like we just did something really quickly to make items drop. We actually designed a really big system that is going to power pretty much every loot drop in the game for like years to come, and that's why it was so much trouble to actually get it working. And Potato Story is the same thing.
No, Potato Guardian even mentioned like everybody knows that the Toucans respawn. Did you see how they die? And you know what? This has to do with that too. I mean, it's not like, come on, like these guys, they are like an oppressive force, sprawling all around the galaxy. I mean, these guys are for real, right? Like. It's not as simple to just, they just don't vanish whenever you beat them. That's something that is very important.
Yeah, like they don't actually die. Like this is something that we really try to focus with Legend, is that we try to be as much as a family kind of game as we can. So, and I don't think that you can really be a hero and kill 1,000 people at the same time, I don't think that the ends justify the means. And the Relic Hunters, they don't die, right? If you're a Relic Hunter, even Relic Hunter 0, you get KO'd, and Ace teleports you back to the Space Heart in Relic Hunter 0. And Legend's the same thing, like you're not gonna die, or else the story is not gonna make sense. So you get KO'd and get teleported to safety. And the Dukan is pretty much the same thing, right? And you're just KOing these Dukans. You're just trying to do, like, you're trying to achieve something. You're just not going there and trying to kill everybody, So that's why the missions always have like a goal. Like you're trying to get in the way of these patrols that are giving trouble to the citizens of the secret market of Hilltown, right? You're trying to get these goods to cross the canyon. You're trying to get into this base and finding their plans and stuff. So the violence is not the goal. The violence is just something that happens, and it's something that is the Dukans is like the hunters don't escalate the violence, it's always the Dukans.
And also it's very important to remember that this is not a war. This is not a battle that has a beginning and an end. Like this is a constant struggle. This is a constant battle. Like these characters, they are in this world and they do the stuff that they do.
And they are underdogs, right? It's not like you can shoot down an galactic empire,
Yeah, exactly. Like there's like you, and besides, you can't win over like an oppressive and very violent army, doing the same to them. Like it's not how you actually win this kind of stuff. Like it's about winning, the trust of the people and winning the hearts of characters and stuff. That's how you actually win. the
Exactly.
battles.
Like the Dukans are so powerful because Dukan stole the pass, right?
Yeah.
And when you steal the pass, you control the presence, you know. And what the Relic Hunters are trying to do is not just shoot all of the Dukans until their
See what
piece,
happens.
yeah, until pieces restored. Like you cannot
Yeah.
do that. And
Yeah.
they're really trying to get the pass back, you know. So the pass was stolen; they need to get it back because that's how you're going to show everybody in the galaxy the truth, right? And
Yeah.
they are going to free themselves. You're not going to free people. You're going to just show them the truth, and they are going to free themselves. Like the truth shall set them free.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go. The truth will set them free. And Potato Garden even asked, like, I want to believe that they are saved by ninja medics. I like that idea. I'm gonna put ninja medics into the lore.
Well, Beto has drawn ninja dogs like several times.
So there you go.
Beto is a huge otaku, so
Oh yeah.
ninjas are going to be in the game at some point. We just can't like they're sneaky. They come in the shadows and they just get into the game. And it's gonna happen.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's 6 p.m. So we're probably going to be wrapping this up.
That's great.
Any last thoughts, Pedro?
I just want to say that although it doesn't look like like we are doing a lot and lots of changes and stuff, both in the game, both in the story, but it doesn't look like it much right now. But we are working a lot of this hard stuff that we have to really think about before we move on to bigger things. Like if we don't have like a solid base for everything that we do, and I hope that we showed through this these streams and stuff that like we really try to build everything very holistically in this game. Like we can't just like build something and then another person builds another part of the game and then we try to meld them all together. Like it doesn't work for us. Like this is something that we know that we have, for it to be good, for the audience, we have to really look at it holistically in its whole way. But I'm really, really glad that we're doing something like that. It's a very special project.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I don't even know why do I pay you, right?
See,
You're
dude,
just having so much fun.
exactly. Like you should forbid me of having so much fun writing.
I forbid you of having fun.
Forbid you.
That's a very Duke thing.
That's a very different thing.
Yes. I wish we could show like one of the things just one thing. One of the things I'm most excited about in the very short term, because of course we're excited about all these things that we just talked about, but in the very very short term, what I'm most excited about is just doing more comics.
Yes.
And because the comics were so much fun doing last year, and Pedro already wrote more. We have 3 issues already written down. And we are negotiating with Roni, who did the previous comics, to come in 2019 and do more. And it's gonna be just awesome. Like
Awesome.
there's just so many opportunities for us to just keep telling stories in this universe. And I think all the hard work that we're putting now to just flesh out the world and flesh out the characters and the timelines and the people and the places, all of this richness is going to pay itself off like tenfold when we start just telling these stories and being like these tour guides that we want to be.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's something really special. Like we know how much we're putting into work right now, but like it's going to be paying off for
Yeah.
sure.
So thank you guys very much for coming to the stream. And if you have any more questions, you can just reach us out at Discord. I'm trying to put the link here in chat. There we go. So just gonna put the link here in chat right now. Our Discord community is so fun. If you guys haven't been there already, just come join us. It's discord.gg/Relic Hunters. And it's a very fun community, always active, always welcoming. And yeah, we should be wrapping up for this year pretty soon. We're going to go on a short vacation, a 1 week vacation starting this weekend. It's just gonna be for a week, and after we come back, we're gonna have new stuff, new build, and a big blog post just detailing everything that is going to happen in 2019. And spoiler alert, all of it is very excited. We're finally going to like be putting this game on the fifth gear. We're hiring
Yeah.
a lot of people. The studio's growing. We're getting like the basic systems are almost all of them are done, and we're going to speed up and do like a lot of really fun, really cool stuff next year.
It's going to be pretty amazing. I'm really, really excited.
Yeah, so thank you guys very much for coming. Thank you, Pedro, for your time. And
Thank you guys. Thank you, Potato Guardian. I love when you guys comment here, and I love when you guys ask questions. I love answering them.
cool. So yeah, see you guys next time. Bye bye.
Bye.